Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks with another podcast this week coming to you from Madrid, Spain, the capital, joined again by John. How are you today, John?
I'm good, thank you.
Had a good week?
Yeah, it's been very busy. We've got even more classes now with the exams and everything coming up, so busy.
Even more classes?
Yeah, it's just
good.
Crazy at the moment.
There's no end to your student list.
It isn't at the moment. It's crazy, my student list.
Well, better to have lots than nothing.
Oh no, I'm thrilled. I'm really happy about it. It's just I feel bad when I get students that I can't give classes to when they ask them. I feel quite guilty about it, but I just haven't got any more hours in the day.
Yeah, no, that's it. You have to wait till your kids get a bit older and bring them into the business.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but we'll see. Hopefully the older one will be going to university sort of in about 6-7 years time, and she'll do something important with her life, save the world, stop the global warming or whatever.
Not teaching English.
No, well, she could do, but I don't know if that's really her. She's so outgoing and lively. I think I'd like her to do something that she really enjoys, and I think she needs to be doing something that is sort of quite active. Something
a bit different.
Yeah.
Good, something active. Okay, good. There is a lot of demand for teaching English in Spain. I think we've spoken about this before, but even trying to find teachers nowadays, I've been looking for teachers over the last few weeks, and there's so much demand that for teachers that it's difficult even to find people. I mean, I think that's so many people wanting classes.
That's one of the things that's happened in Rivas. We just we haven't got enough teachers in the area really at the moment. It might change next year. It all depends on the teaching assistants that come into the schools as well, because you get a lot of teaching assistants coming to the bilingual schools, and then they do extra classes after the schools, and they take up a lot of the slack and things. But this year, for some reason, the teaching assistants haven't really been doing many private classes. No, apparently there's one school that all the teaching assistants go straight home straight after the school, so they're not doing any classes in the area. They're doing some in Madrid, but nothing here.
That's strange.
So it's a bit weird this year.
Do they live in the area normally, teaching? No? They live
nearly all of them go straight to the centre of Madrid, and they commute here every day, so that doesn't help.
Well, it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, they come over here really to have an experience and enjoy a year away from their native country, and they're not here just to teach English. So most of them teach extra classes so they can afford to maybe go away for a weekend in Europe somewhere and visit other countries, not just to earn money. They're not bothered about that really.
They're here for the party.
Yes, definitely.
For the party, the Madrid night.
Yeah, they basically try to most of them, not all of them, but most of them try to work the bare minimum to get by, and they scrape by on what they've got and make sure they enjoy themselves. Really.
Yeah, they probably obviously get a little bit of help from mum and dad to pay the rent, maybe.
I don't know. I've got to admit, most of them that I've met so far, they haven't really had, as far as I know, they haven't had any help from their parents or anything. They've got their €1,000 that they earn from the school. A lot of that goes on the expenses, obviously, with rent and everything, and then they take extra classes to get extras. So if they want more, I mean, they could live on the €1,000 a month, but just barely. So they do the extra classes just to.
Well, that's it. Yeah,
to have fun.
Yeah, and you wouldn't want to live in a place like this. I mean, we've said it before. We're 20 kilometres away from the centre of Madrid. You've got public transport to get you in and out. Okay, I suppose. It's an extended timetable now, so you can enjoy a little bit of the nightlife and get home to a place like this. But if you're going to come to a city like Madrid and you're young, you want to be bang in the centre if you can.
Exactly.
Right?
They all go for the centre. I mean, the majority of the ones that I know live around La Latina, Malasaña.
Of course. Yeah.
Up that way, really. Most of them. But
where you can just sort of stumble home.
Yeah, I mean, if they had to get back to Rivas, the last metro finishes at 1 something in the morning now. It's extended, but I mean, in Madrid you don't go out until 11 o'clock at night, so it's not as if you'd have a particularly amazing social life if you did that.
Yeah, well, that's it. And the social life, Madrid has a fantastic social life. If you are out and about in, Madrid, Barcelona, any of the big cities, that's it. Very good nightlife here in Spain. So, We'll talk about an Indian restaurant, John, that has opened up locally. It's the first one. It's 2019, and we've finally got an Indian restaurant. We've finally got an Indian restaurant here. I'm not really an expert on Indian food because it wasn't big in Australia when I was living there. Australia had more of a Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Thailand, Singapore influence, I suppose, rather than an Indian one, but now it's changed completely. Of course, there's lots of Indian people there. If you saw the cricket recently, the Australia-Indian Test Series, there were more Indians in the crowd than there were Australians, obviously, because we were playing pretty shite. But the Indian restaurant here, I checked it out last night. As I said, I'm not an expert on Indian food, so I'm going to wait to get your opinion on that. But it is good to see a bit of variety because there hasn't been a lot of different restaurants. I mean, we've got plenty of different types of Spanish restaurants. You've got your Gallegos, you've got your that's right. You've got your Andalusia restaurants.
Ones that's specifically based on Madrid food as well.
Madrid food, the local Castilla, Leon, La Mancha food. That type of stuff, and Chinese, of course. But maybe there's a vegetarian restaurant which is quite famous as well now. Argentinian restaurants. I think there's even a Peruvian restaurant, but we haven't had an Indian one until now.
No. What surprises me with Rivas is, it's a big town now. 80-something thousand people living in Rivas now.
Probably
must be close to 90,
minimum 85, I think.
Yeah, I think it's getting close to 90. And we're actually quite restricted with the different restaurants we've got here. We have got a couple of sushi restaurants. We've got your typical Chinese restaurants.
Well, the sushi went through a period there where every second restaurant that was opening up was a sushi restaurant.
Yeah.
And now there's the natural law of things is sort of
a few of them have gone.
Sort of got rid of 50% of them.
Well, one of them lasted about 5 months or 6 months or something in the main shopping centre.
Well, there was at one stage there was 3 in the main shopping centre, and then 2 of them disappeared, and I think even one that I think it was a chain that also disappeared. And there was one down the road here that opened as well next to the Chinese restaurant. It was a sushi delivery place. Did you ever see it?
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
And that's also closed down as well.
Really?
Yeah. So sushi is not the flavour of the month anymore. But this Indian restaurant's decided to open up. I don't know whether they're Indians or not. I haven't really got a feel. I think they are.
I actually spoke to the owner.
Oh, did you?
I think it was the day before the Three Kings, I think it was. We went up there for a meal, not to the Indian restaurant. We were in another restaurant, and I had no idea the Indian restaurant was there. Found it was like a massive, great surprise. Yeah, so I was having a good chat with the owner of the Indian restaurant. But unfortunately, I've just been so busy recently, I haven't had a chance to go there yet. But I need to go with the guys because my wife and kids aren't 100% behind Indian food.
Oh, no?
No, they'll eat some things. I sometimes cook chicken korma or tikka masala or something at home, but they're not massive fans of spicy food.
Well, that's. I mean, I'm going to generalise here, but 9 out of 10 Spaniards, I'll say 8 to be fair, don't like spicy food.
A lot of them do sort of steer clear of spicy food, I've got to admit, but in specific spices. Because if you go to a lot of Spanish people really like Mexican food. For example, a lot of my friends, they love Mexican food and they'll eat jalapenos and things. And they're quite happy with that. But when it comes to herbs and spices mixed together and different flavour,
it's a different type of it's a different type of spice.
Exactly.
The Mexican spice is bang, blow your mouth, drink your water and away you go. Whereas the Indian one's sort of that constant spice. As with Thai, with that type of.
But then saying that, probably half of my wife's cousins, I mean, there's a whole load of them living in Rivas. It's crazy. But half of them have actually all said they wanted to come to the Indian restaurant. They like spicy food.
They want to try it.
Yeah, they want to try it. So I think the younger generation are coming around to spicy food, but definitely all of my wife's family, sort of in my generation and above, steer well clear of spicy food. And then half of my generation and below are all going towards it. So I think it just depends on the.
Well, that's
the age.
it's obviously the travel aspect as well. People are travelling more nowadays. Probably they're going to places like London, spending some time there, and realising that in London, there in every third restaurant's an Indian restaurant, probably. And
the Indian food is massive in the UK. I mean, we've got a massive influence of with Indian people in the UK anyway. We have had for a long time now. So we've got a lot of restaurants, but. Well, I mean, I know I often compare what I was living in and the experience I had in the UK in my town.
Well, I remember
compared to here.
Well, I remember going to your town.
Can you remember that?
And the Indian restaurants were the majority there.
We've got a massive. Just so the viewers know, my town is basically about 5,000 people in the main town. We have a fairly short high street. We actually have 7 churches in the town. So, I mean, it gives you an idea of the history of the town. There's all different religions and everything. And then you look at the restaurants. We've got 8 pubs, and the majority of the pubs serve British food. So you have your typical roast dinners, lots of vegetables, your meat pies and things like that. So that's your British,
typical British grub.
Yeah, typical British pub grub. So that they do that, and then we've got an Italian restaurant, we've got a French restaurant, we've got I think it's 6 Indian restaurants.
6 Indian restaurants. There you go.
But the thing is, a couple of them are from the same area, but a lot of them are from different areas of India.
Okay,
so you've got different types of
cooking
food.
styles.
Yeah, and not just India either. I mean, one of the Indian restaurants, which is called an Indian restaurant, I mean, it's in their title, is actually run by people from Bangladesh.
Oh, okay.
But because the initial influx of restaurants from Asia were Indian restaurants, when the Bangladeshis opened the restaurants, instead of trying to create a different type of restaurant niche, they actually called themselves Indian restaurants, and you'll find there's the same with Pakistanis as well. There's a few places that are owned by Pakistanis that are also called Indian restaurants, which is very weird. I found that very strange. But we've got those. We've got 4 Chinese restaurants. Sorry, I'll call them Chinese restaurants because that's what they call them back there. But we've got 3 that are actually Chinese. One's Peking. One's owned by someone from Hong Kong. There's another one that's Thai food mainly, but it has Chinese food there as well. And then you've got your takeaways. You've got a kebab shop. You've got fish and chips. You've got your Indian takeaway as well. You've got your Kentucky Fried Chicken, pizza. All those takeaways down one end of the town, and then all the other restaurants the others. And on top of that, we've got a tapas bar.
Tapas bar now as well.
Yeah. However, I think the tapas bar was owned, if I'm not mistaken, it was owned by someone from Mexico.
Oh, okay.
So I think they tried to introduce some Spanish tapas as well, but it wasn't really authentic. But we've got a brand new French restaurant that's opened. It's really, really popular at the moment as well. Gourmet burgers and stuff. It's just ridiculous in such a small town to have a massive amount of influence from international cuisine.
That's the point. 5,000 there, let's say. 85,000 here. Here, no French restaurants. No Thai. There might be one. There's no Thai restaurants.
No, I think so.
Indians just opened recently, the last few months.
Got Japanese.
It's
called Japanese, isn't it? I think it's a Japanese restaurant. Is it the one that's just down near the main shopping centre? Near Oramas, not far from us actually. I think it's Japanese.
Oh, is it? Shabu?
Yeah.
I think it's just Chinese.
Is it?
Yeah.
I thought it was Japanese.
Well, they sort of do a bit of both.
Okay.
They sort of think that, if you look Asian, you could get away with being Japanese or Chinese. I think the same probably in the way that if you're Pakistani, Bangladeshi, or Indian, you get away with cooking.
Yeah, I think they don't do it to try and mislead people. I think it's just try to make sure that when people choose where they want to go, they know the type of food they're going to get when they get there. So I think that's why the Bangladeshis called the restaurants Indian restaurants in my town, because I think they were concerned that if they called it Bangladeshi, people would actually look for Indian food and go to the Indian restaurants, and they wouldn't actually reserve in that restaurant, which I think was probably a mistake. I think they should have gone for.
Well, it's that niche aspect, as I said before.
Something
I mean,
different.
if you can, well, that's it. People nowadays are looking for different things.
Turkish restaurant as well in Stony Stratford, in my town. We've got a Turkish one.
Well,
That's really popular.
Well, there was a Turkish restaurant here as well, but it went broke. He was a bit too ambitious, I think. Yeah, well, he had a kebab shop, and then he decided to do a purely Turkish one. Or so. Was it Turkish? Or I can't remember exactly what it was. But he went from kebabs to this big fancy place and couldn't bring people in, because at the end of the day, the reason that there aren't a lot of choices because people are not willing to take the risk, because 9 out of 10 people probably on a Friday night are just going to look to go to the traditional places that they normally go to. You know what I mean?
It does seem that way. I've got to admit, when I went up to I didn't see any promotional material on the Indian restaurant at all. I just saw the Indian restaurant open. But when I went up there, we were eating in Foster's, which is next door to the Indian restaurant, which is an Americanized thing. We went there purely because there's loads of space for the kids to run around. There wasn't for the food or anything, and we were going with 20 people, so it was like, well, this is just make it easy, and we just booked there.
Kids can play.
I mean, that's a massive thing. I think if you open a restaurant in Spain, which is a different type of eating experience than back in the UK. You got somewhere where you've got space for the kids to play and run around after they've had their dinner. You're going to be full all the time. It's just what people want, and that's what we need.
It's what people are looking for.
But we didn't see anything about the Indian restaurant. Foster's was fairly full. The restaurant, which is the other side of the hallway the passageway, was full.
Which is a typical normal Spanish place.
3 people in it.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's going to take them. It's going to take a while for it to catch on, if it does catch on.
Was it busy last night?
And I hope and I hope it does. Well, we went there fairly early, so I'm going to give the guy the benefit of the doubt.
What's early in your mind?
We ordered the food at 7:30.
Oh, blimey, that's early for Spain, yeah.
Well, yeah, but you know, I try not to fall into the late during the week.
I'm surprised they're open at 7:30.
Well, the chef wasn't there. They had to go and find him. I don't know where he was. So I saw the guy run off and get the chef. But anyway, now we'll move on. We've got an interesting comment from a lady. Annie, good to see we're getting some ladies leaving some comments here, because the demographics of the channel are 75-25. So Annie is one of the 25% of women watching the podcasts.
We're obviously not that popular.
not well. We need to get that female voice in here. I think to try to change those demographics. But anyway, we can work on that. I just have to try to find somebody who's willing to sit here with us. Maybe they could even participate through Skype. We don't know. But anyway, if there's anyone out there, give us a shout. So she says, "Cheers, guys. I enjoy the podcasts. Thanks for the work you put in to them." Some questions or topics. Now let's have a look at the first one. She says, "Are there any topics that you definitely should not touch when talking to a Spanish person?" And she mentions the Civil War, Franco, all of the typical ones that pop up. So we'll deal with those ones first. Now, I don't mention those two particular topics, the Civil War or Franco. I try to avoid those. Not because I don't want to debate them. In fact, it can sometimes be quite an interesting topic to get people's points of view on those things here, but just simply because sometimes the conversation can go bad if people don't agree with some of the things that you say. And that's one of the points I'm going to make here with this topic, is that I find, my personal opinion, John, is that I find sometimes Spanish people a bit touchy about topics relating to their country. Do you know what I mean? They sometimes they don't take any type of criticism from outside well. No,
I mean, not even criticism. It's just something that they might feel is criticising the country, which isn't actually meant as a criticism. The Spanish people in general don't particularly like receiving any criticism of their country at all. Which is understandable. No one likes it. No one likes being criticised, do you? But I think it's very difficult to debate some things with Spanish people. Again, in general, this is very much in general.
Well, let's just put that on the table. We're always speaking in general here, of course, because you're always going to find varying opinions.
Of course.
But in general, I'll say it again, I find sometimes that people are not open to criticism. And,
but with regards to the Civil War, I've spoken to a lot of people about the Civil War before, but not who was right, who was wrong, which side were you on, and all this sort of thing. I was talking about pure historical debate, really, and to discuss what happened and why it happened, but not with anyone trying to say it was a certain person's fault or this was wrong or this was right. So I've never really had an issue with talking about the Civil War until you get into the politics of it. So then I steer clear of the politics of it.
Well, it's still a touchy subject today.
Yeah. You sort of try to avoid that. But the historical points, obviously, they're quite important. We had a big battle here, the Battle of Jarama.
That's right.
Near Rivas. So historically, it's important to learn about these things. And I think the children should probably learn more about the Civil War than what they do at the school. But Franco, we tend to avoid trying to speak of Franco, especially certain people. I mean, my family, we avoid it a lot. My wife's granddad was actually imprisoned on the death penalty for 5 years because he was supporting Franco's opposition.
Yeah.
And he was put straight in jail because of his beliefs, and he was there for 5 years. Fortunately, he actually wasn't put to death. He was released back out, and but he saw a lot of his friends die, and
it was a sensitive topic.
We couldn't talk about it. He actually wrote an autobiography,
really?
Which is sitting somewhere. Hasn't been published or anything, but he's actually written it and talked about his times in the prison. So we have to be careful with that, and I think a lot of people have had bad experiences, or their family have had bad experiences through the Civil War.
Well, it was. I mean, I'm not an expert on this topic, but I can imagine that a civil war is probably the most difficult type of war, because as people say, it's family member against family member. It's cousin against brother sometimes, and
brother against brother in many cases.
Well, brother against brother. I mean, in a big city like Madrid, I'm going to say that you probably don't feel it as much. But if you're living in a small town, that's where people were divided, and a lot of these families are still living together. And,
I think even in Madrid, they had a lot of problems in Madrid with people fighting against each other, and a lot of persecution. And
I can understand that, but in a big city like Madrid, you've got the aspect of anonymity that you don't get in a smaller place. So if you go into a village, or not a village, or a small town, even 10, 15,000 people still remember who were the people that were the aggressors. And remember that what happened in a civil war was that one side won, and the other side was, still had to live here, putting up with that victor. Whereas probably in the World War, obviously, the Germans went home. Everyone got on with their own lives. You weren't having to live with your so-called enemy on a day-to-day basis, which is what happened here. So. To talk about that, avoid the Civil War, obviously. Franco's in the paper all the time here now.
Yeah, it's a big subject at the moment,
because they're trying to dig up his body, of course. So and this is what happens. So these things sort of disappear, then they pop up again, according to who's in government, and it does stir tensions, and let sleeping dogs lie, or whatever the expression is, or but they constantly dig these problems up for the good or for bad. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say what I personally think about this, but those are some things that you need to be careful talking about. I mean, in Australia, we don't have this history. There's nothing like that in Australian history. There was a world war, of course. My grandfather spoke about world war against the Japanese, against the Germans, but it's not something that you felt close,
Yeah, I mean, we've got obviously more history in the UK.
Yeah, but a civil war in the UK.
We haven't had a civil war for hundreds of years.
That's it. So it's not something that happened 2 generations ago. No. So it still can be a sensitive topic. But other things as well. I mean, you have to choose the person that you're speaking to understand what you can and what you can't talk about.
Yeah.
So if you meet someone for the first time, I mean, don't bring up politics, for example, you know, because people are very divided on politics still.
Yeah, politics here is very touchy because even people who support the same party can often come to blows with regards to specific politicians and corruption and things. So I just avoid talking about politics to anyone. I believe what I believe, and I can't even vote here anyway. Only in the local elections.
But I mean,
so I just avoid talking about.
But politics. We said this. I mean, you can have an opinion on things, of course. But I mean, here it's like I remember when I first came, I was surprised how often you would hear the word fascist.
Yeah.
And how often you would hear the word, people would call you red.
Rojos.
Yeah, no, they'd call you, and I'd never heard that language in Australia, for example.
I experienced that for the first time here as well.
Yeah. I mean, I was on the metro one time, and there was a youngish guy sitting in the seat that's reserved for older people. Yeah. And somebody asked him to get up, and he said, don't tell me what to do, you fascist. And I thought, geez, that's a strong word to be using here, but part of the vernacular, part of the vocabulary, Yeah. And the other one, rojo, rojo, and rojo de toda la vida.
But it's always those expressions or words. Well,
I've heard that in London.
Yeah.
I've heard that in London with Red Ken. You remember that Ken Livingstone? They used to call him Red Ken, but here it was like a common thing. Es un poquito rojo, es un poquito facha.
But it's always when they get into a conversation, there's a bit of a debate, it gets a bit heated, and then as soon as one starts losing the sort of like the debate, if you like, that person starts calling the other one rojo or fascist, and it's always the same. So I avoid politics at all costs. Yeah, me personally, I often try to steer clear of the Gibraltar debate, being British. Well, anything to do with Gibraltar, and also there's quite a lot of Argentinians in Madrid as well, and the Spanish often side with the Argentinians.
Don't mention the war.
Gibraltar or the Falklands, Malvinas. You just avoid those because there's no point in talking about it to anyone. You can't do anything about it. There's no, in my opinion, looking at both sides and the history and everything that's happened on both of those topics. I don't think you've really got a right and a wrong on either side. So I find it very hard because of the way things have developed over the years. I think it'd be very, very difficult to actually solve this issue because of the people that are involved in it now, not from 300 years ago. So I think it's something I try to avoid as well, discussing, and it's something I won't be discussing in the comments much either, if anyone wants to bring that up. So
because some people do try to bait you in the comments. That's right, bringing up some sensitive comments or sensitive topics, let's say. She also, I'll just to finish that point off, I will say that I find that Spanish people, even though they can have heated debates, the next day everything seems to be forgotten. Do you know? They don't hold grudges a lot of the time.
I actually quite enjoy these debates. My wife loves debating things and that, but then 5 minutes later, she's sitting there having a caña with whoever she's been talking to, laughing about what they did when they were 15 years old. It's just debating.
We've had people around here for dinner, and I swear that knives were sometimes, people that they were literally going to kill themselves. That's how heated the debate got. And then 10 minutes later or 20 minutes later, it's all forgotten, and they move on. They talk about something else. So I will say that they don't hold grudges a lot of the times, which I think is
it's nice.
Which I think is positive. Now, and he also talks about here the topic of higher education. I think we talked about schools, primary schools. I don't know whether we talked about high schools much.
A little bit.
Vocational schools she mentions here, and universities. She says that she's heard that vocational education is quite popular in Spain nowadays. When I first came many, many years ago, vocational education, or getting a trade or learning to do some type of manual job, mechanic or whatever, panel beater, anything along those lines, was not really well seen by a lot of the population. A lot of people wanted their children to go to university to get that higher education, to get a degree, to not have to work in the factories, to not have to work in the workshops. And I suppose that that's changed over the last few years, primarily because of the crisis.
Yeah, I think more people are looking into those sort of jobs now. So a lot of those jobs can actually be more secure than some of the higher positions.
Absolutely.
Now. So yeah, I think people's point of view and people's the parents' perceptions of what they see their children doing in the future has changed, and they just want their children to be happy and have a job.
Yeah, well, that's the key. Yeah, get
yeah.
a job and be able to stay in the country.
Yeah, and I think some of them see that. Before, I've got to admit, sort of 15, 20 years ago, you knew someone, you knew what they were like, you knew their academic capabilities, and you could see their parents pushing them to improve their maths results, and you've got to do this if you want to be a lawyer and stuff. And you could tell that the person there, your friend, was not going to be a lawyer. They just didn't have that academic capability for that, and they didn't want to be either. They were quite happy doing something else. But I think the parents have, over the last sort of 10, 15 years, things have changed, and the parents are sort of leaving their kids to sort of go down the path of their choosing more rather than pushing them down it themselves.
Yeah, that's it. And there are I think there's a lot more opportunity. I think there's a lot more opportunity now for as I said, in Australia, if you go to like a TAFE or something, more manual labour, let's say. I'm not sure exactly of the word, but just not going to university, because I've met people that it took them 10 years to get their degree. I think we mentioned that before, and people are, even when they get a degree, it's no guarantee, because education has been cheapened here. People get masters and they get MBAs, and they're not able to get a good salary because so many people have the same qualifications. So if everybody has the same qualifications, it means that yours is worth a little bit less. So if you can do something, it's all about doing something that you like. And if parents are not pushing their children down the university path, there's more choices available. Fantastic.
I think there is another side to this as well, though. As we mentioned in the previous podcast, or a couple of podcasts ago, the Spanish people are very family orientated. It's very important to them, keeping the family together. And if you only have to look at the amount of youth that are now moving abroad to other countries because they've got their degrees, they've got their qualifications, and they just can't find jobs here.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the parents see that, and they're like, oh my God, if...
Well, if they
that's keep pushing them to get these degrees out there, they might actually lose their children to another country.
That's the point I was trying to make. That parents want their kids to be close. Obviously, a lot of parents don't want their children to go and live in another country. So if they can get a job locally, obviously that's going to keep the family together, and you don't have to worry about only coming home for Christmas, which has been the case for a lot of people over the last 10 years that have had to go to Germany to work, have had to go to the USA, Australia. A lot of people here...
There's a lot of Spanish who've gone to the UK.
That's been happening for a long time. I remember when I was living in the UK, there were lots of Spanish people living there.
But I've noticed more, whereas before I noticed a lot of Spanish people going to the UK for... mainly to try and learn English, and they were going getting waitress jobs, waiter jobs, cleaning jobs in the capital in London. But now I've noticed more Spanish people going to UK for other types of jobs.
Yeah, well, nurses, I know.
Vets. I've got a few friends that have gone over that are in the travel industry, and they're working in England now. 3 of them, in fact, that are working in quite good jobs, high paid jobs. Quite high up management, and they've been in the UK for quite a while now. Yeah. And then of course you've got the Santander as well, so you've got quite a lot of banking jobs gone over there as well.
Well, that's right. Yeah. Banco Santander, Banco Sabadell, I think, bought TSB. Was that a bank in the UK? TSB. I think
TSB, but that's Lloyd's.
Lloyd's but I think Sabadell bought TSB from Lloyd's.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I have to check that.
Yeah.
Have to check that. But anyway, that's what she says. And the other thing she mentions here is about establishing your own company in Spain. Now, you're self-employed. I have a company. Self-employed is fairly easy to do. Just means that you have to pay your own taxes, your own social security contributions every month. just have to register at the local social security office, I do believe, if you are a European Union citizen, I think.
Yep.
It's a little bit different if you come from outside the EU, because you have to obviously get the special permissions to be able to work as self-employed. But I went through that many years ago. I can't remember the exact process now, and it might have changed over the years. But to open a business or to establish a company, basically you need to have 3,005 euros social capital, they call it here. That's the fundamental thing. And you also have to register your company with the at the business registry. You have to register there. My advice would be to talk to a gestor, somebody who's able to do this for you. That's what I did in my personal situation. I said to my gestor, his name is Manuel, I said, Manuel, I want to open a business. What do I need to do? He said, this. All I did was sign.
Yep.
I went to the notary on the day that I was told to go to the notary. I did all of the bank stuff first of all. Got the 3,500 euros, went to another place to deposit that. So it's a bit of a process and it takes a little bit of time, but get somebody to do it for you. Get somebody to cross all the I's, to cross all the T's and dot all the I's.
That's quite important. I think I often see comments, especially in places like the Citizens Advice Bureau and things.
That's another.
Where people sort of say, "Oh no, do it yourself. It's so easy. It's an easy process." And yeah, you could do it yourself. And it is. Becoming self-employed is fairly an easy process. It's filling out a few forms. You can do a lot of it online.
Yeah, but doing your tax return is going to be more.
Exactly.
It's going to be difficult.
And I think people try to do it on their own. They think it's very easy. It does look very easy, and it does come across very easy, and you can easily do it. However, it's so easy to make a mistake, and if you make a mistake, it's going to come down on you. You're going to end up having to pay out fines and things as well. So I just to avoid that, and just for peace of mind, I use a gestor. But I think you've got to be confident enough to do it on your own if you're really going to go down that route.
And you've got to speak the language.
And you've got to speak language.
Well. Yeah. See, the thing about these gestors, now it's not as if I'm trying to promote them, but they have made my life easier. Okay, that's the main reason that I use them, because let's say, for example, you get a letter from the tax department, which has happened to me because of something that I didn't do correctly. I just send it to him and say, Manuel, can you take care of this for me? And he takes care of it for you. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So obviously you're paying a fee, which is, in my case, it's a monthly fee. You probably pay monthly as well. Yeah. So that monthly fee, you can, get these little problems sorted out. I mean, I as I said, with that when that letter arrives from the taxation department, it's always a bit of a, what have we done?
Heart in your mouth type thing. Yeah, what are they going to?
That's right.
Charge me with now.
That's right. Get a letter from the Social Security office. You get a letter from the taxation department. What have I done? How do I go about fixing it? Yeah, you can do it yourself, but if somebody can do it for you for a small fee, just take the stress out of the equation,
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what I would do. So if you're going to try to establish your own company, think about it as well, because as I said, you've got to have that 3,005 euros. I don't know what the 5 euros does there. Maybe they could just round it up to 3,000, but it's 3,005 for some reason. And the paperwork, just get everything, registering the business name, all of the normal things that you would do in other countries as well. But here, spend a lot of time trying to find the right documents. But, as I said, get somebody to do it for you. Now we'll move on to the last point here. We've been going for nearly 38 minutes. So another comment here from Force Major, I think you pronounce it that way, I'm not sure. He said something about the summer and winter time change and how they're talking about scrapping that, okay? I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with this topic, but obviously you have your daylight savings time. We're coming up to that now, where we put the clocks forward or back an hour. I can't remember exactly how it works, but they go forward or they go back. And then in November or late October, you change them back again. But the European Union has said that countries are now able to scrap that if you want. You don't have to change the time. You can leave it on summertime or you can leave it on wintertime according to what the population wants to do. Now, here in Spain, it's a little bit different because Spain is not on its natural time zone.
No.
We are on Central European time.
Yeah, it's actually it's something that Franco changed to coincide with the German times when he was supporting the Germans in the Second World War.
That's right. So Hitler said to Franco, Francisco, it's a good idea if we're on the same time level because I can't, my watch is, don't want to have to keep changing my watch every time I come down here.
I can't work out -1.
That's it.
Yeah.
I can't, it's a bit confusing for me. So please, Mr. Franco, change the time. So it's a little bit strange in the sense that Portugal's on its natural time zone, which is the same as the UK, Greenwich Mean Time, and Spain is not. But the irony here is that the north of Spain, Galicia, is exactly the same time zone as Portugal, right? So you cross the border from Portugal into the north of Spain, and you have to change your
watch.
You have to change your watch. Doesn't make sense. But there has been talk over the last couple of years about changing this. I mean, it's popped up in the newspapers. I think the last government, the Partido Popular government, was talking about changing it. Never happened. So it is something that it's one of these things, John, that it's easy to do, but not easy to reverse the decision for some reason. You know what I mean? It becomes a debate.
Yeah, I think...
I'm sure it wasn't a debate when Franco did it. He just did it.
Yeah, he just did it, yeah. But no, I think it's something that at some point in time they're going to change back, I think. I think people are sort of pushing more for it now than they have been before. So I think at some point it will end up changing back to how it was. But not in the near future, I don't think. I think it's going to take a while.
I don't know. But the main thing on the agenda now, so we're taking that out of the equation, taking the Spain going back to GMT rather than CET, Central European time. So the idea is that they're talking about scrapping the summer, the winter time change. Now, a lot of people here in Spain, from what I've heard, are in favour of keeping the summertime.
Yep.
Which means that in the middle of winter, the sun will go down at about, instead of going down at 6:15 as it does now, 6:30 probably now, a little bit later, it won't go down until 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Right.
Probably, I think, in Valencia. But it also means that in the morning, it's not going to come up until 9:15.
Yeah.
And I think there's Galicia again, it's not going to come up until 9:10, if that is the case. So I don't know what people are in favour of here, but I know the tourism industry is pushing to keep summertime all year round. What's your opinion on that, John? Do you care about that?
Honestly,
really care?
Really couldn't give a monkey's.
Couldn't care.
Doesn't really bother me.
Doesn't worry you waking up in the morning and it's still dark until 9:15?
No, I mean, obviously, but the time changes throughout the year. It's always going to be darker and lighter one part of the year than another part of the year. So you're going to always have this difference in time. I think you just got to live with it. I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, obviously, if it's dark in the morning when the kids have got to go to school and they've got to walk to school in the dark, it's not so good. So I'm not that keen on that. But I certainly wouldn't push for anything or say I prefer this than that, because you've got swings and roundabouts. Some things are good and some things are bad. It affects you in good ways and bad ways.
Yeah. I don't know. I think probably if I was going to change that, I'd probably wait to get on the natural time before I started to bring that change in. You know what I mean? Because you're manipulating it again, let's say. So
no, I'd go back to your proper timeline. Go back to GMT, and then look at the possibilities of what you should or shouldn't be doing. Yeah,
but having said that, I come from the only part of Australia that doesn't change to summertime. Western Australia stays on the same time all year round. It doesn't change. Okay. The eastern states, even I think South Australia, do change. Western Australia doesn't. So, and they had referendums about that. People didn't want more sun in the afternoons. They want sun in the morning. They don't want it in the afternoon. If I had to choose, I probably would go down that line there. I'm a morning person. You know, I like to wake up early in the morning, and here when I walk to work, sometimes 8:30 in the morning, it's still dark. I like to be able to look at things, in natural light. And I do appreciate it now that at 7:30 in the morning, it's starting to, they're starting the birds are starting to sing and the sun's coming out. That's it.
Light. No, I mean, I do prefer that. If I had to choose one, I think I'd definitely go down that route, because do I really want it to be light at 10 o'clock at night?
Well, in summer it's light,
in summer
but in
10
winter,
o'clock,
but in winter it'd be up until about 7:30. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't be that late. But that seems to be the push that's going to go on here. So we'll see what happens with regard to that. So we'll start to wrap it up, John. 40 plus minutes of banter again this week. So we'll wrap it up. As I said, thanks for your input this week.
No problem.
Questions or comments, leave them in the section below. If you have anything that you want to ask us that you think that we should talk about, feel free to put it in the comment section. And don't forget to leave comments. We do look at them. We don't always reply, but we do look at them. So we'll see you next week, or you can hear us next week in the podcast if you are listening to us on Apple, Spotify, or whatever the podcast platform. We'll see you next week. Hasta luego.